Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D. Today, we're going to be talking about brook trout. Now, many of you might fish for brook trout here in Virginia. Maybe you go in the Rapidan. Maybe you go out into some of the streams in West Virginia. But where I started fly fishing back in 1995 in upstate New York, there was quite a few streams that offered brook trout, especially up in the Adirondack State Park. And the guest that I'm going to bring in, we've talked to him before. That is Jordan Ross, who's a good friend of mine, and he's actually working on a proposal that he hopes to bring to New York State to develop a brook trout preservation area in some of the Adirondack streams. First of all, welcome, Jordan.
Hey, welcome to you too, Matt.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for being with me. So, Jordan, we had you on in the fall. We talked about your work with Trout Power, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Your work with Trout Unlimited, and what you did for some studies on brook trout, and now you're taking it a step further. You really want to find an area, and you have actually selected an area in the Adirondack State Park where you want to develop a brook trout preservation area. I'm going to let you kind of take the floor a bit here to give us a general overview of what we're talking about.
Okay. Well, first of all, Matt, you've participated in some of the early Trout Power events, and I want to make it clear that all the work that's done for conservation and brook trout is a collective. It's a collective thing, right? So the only thing that I end up contributing is I end up starting trouble because I have different ideas, and I try to kick the tires a little bit with everybody and get everybody talking about different things that we can do. So one of the things that I sent over to you that I'm trying to open up discussions with, yes, it is the concept of a brook trout preserve, but it's also the concept of doing a temporary action. In other words, sometimes in innovation groups, specifically in software groups, they talk about doing sprints. So my concept is to bring to these organizations and bring to the state the concept of doing a 5-year preserve plan, which essentially is a number of elements to this, including what are the effects of this in regards to how the people feel about it. Generally, the circle of stakeholder groups that work on conservation groups, conservation initiatives are the same. It's the same stakeholder groups, Matt. It's generally some conservation groups, some people involved in DEC and the Bureau, usually someone someone at a Trout Unlimited level. And then there's like a peppering of some of these other conservation groups, and they all kind of know each other. They're all in the same group. And I think that is a little stale.
Right.
I don't like it. I just think we should try to do things that are a little bit more creative. So what you're seeing in this plan is an area around Racket Lake, and what I've identified, whether or not this is what's going to happen with this, I don't know, but there is some stocking that's done in Racket Lake, and I think it's kind of a futile effort to stock these brook trout fingerlings in Racket Lake. When essentially we know that they're being predated on by bass and other species. But some of the work that we did in Trout Power when I was president of Trout Power, when I founded the group, we saw that there was genetic mixing of stocked fish with native wild fish. And the concept of the preserve is to say, okay, for a period of time, let's stop stocking for a period of time, and let's discuss if there are some different methods of angling, and also shutting down the season in the preserve during the spawning time. So right now, it's allowed to catch and release fish in New York in the off season. I think that's great, but my idea is, if we're going to take a period of time where we're going to stop stocking and see what the environment can do, let's give the fish a chance to spawn without any interference at all. And again, the idea here is also to get a lot of response from other channels that are not the normal stakeholders. Okay, these are landowners, these are people, these are people that come to vacation. There's also, what can be done if you try to do this kind of temporary preserve concept or short-term preserve? What can we learn from that then we could share with people in other states? right?
I think that's really important, because what's done in one state, you can then take, if it works, right? Because you're talking a 5-year plan. So we'll know kind of year 3, year 4, how things are working here. But you can take parts of that and help out other states, and they can adapt plans and make changes that make sense for them. Like in this, you say close the season October 15th to January 1st for natural spawning. Well, maybe in a warmer climate, the spawning is more like December to March or something, right? So the spawning times may change. So you may do something like that.
Yeah. So the concept is you do respect the fish in the time that they're trying to spawn, right? And that would be something that would make sense that you would do in a preserve, right? Yeah. I think. So the contention part here is stocking, honestly. And the other contention, the item here that seems to get everybody ruffled, because the major groups, you've got the Nature Conservancy, Trout Unlimited, the Native Fish Coalition, Trout Power. These are all groups that are in New York, and they all have these different views about, the stocked fish. And also there's a lot of disagreement on what is important in a population of fish. Is it if a population of brook trout, for example, has been stocked in a place where they were extinct or extirpated, okay? If you stock the fish there and then the environment changes for the better and those fish start to take care of themselves and you don't need to stock anymore,
right?
Is that population of fish less valuable than a population of fish that has been there since the Ice Age? Okay, and I started Trout Power,
right?
And I have to say that, like, I think I kind of brick walled myself a little bit in a negative way of being thinking that these native strains are like super elite. They're very special, but any population of any species that's able to take care of themselves in this day and age, I think is important. And that whether that's, butterflies to ringneck pheasants to brook trout, brown trout, rainbow trout, striped bass, bluefin tuna. I mean, the list goes on and on and on about, like, trying to have these populations of animals that can take care of themselves. Well, so I am totally off the horse of wild native fish are the ultimate and elite. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think that they're super special. I'll say that again. And those populations, I don't think you want to tamper with them too much. But if you have a chance to try to do some of these things in conservation, where you take a period of time to see what that species is going to do, and you're also kind of like, you're kind of trying to help them a little bit too at the same time, right? Like we talked about, do some different regulations in regards to helping them spawn, do a way, way more outreach to the general public in regards to why these species are important. These are headwater, way upstream species. These brook trout are indicators of way, way up in the watershed. Okay, we're talking the Hudson River. The source of the Hudson River, Lake Tier of the Clouds up in the Adirondacks, is many, many miles away from New York City. Okay, right. And I don't know if you follow stuff that's going on with great white sharks, but now they're finding out that the great white shark nursery is just outside of Manhattan, and that the big fish go to Cape Cod and stuff, but that the sharks are actually now, the nursery is outside of New York City,
which is
and
incredible.
I'm talking about the headwaters of the Hudson up in the Adirondacks. So the brook trout are the indicator, in my opinion, of way up in these watersheds. And the same thing is going to be true in Maine and New Hampshire and Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Virginia, even brook trout populations in Georgia.
Mm-hmm. They're way up in the headwaters. So one of the reasons why and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jordan, why you're focusing on brook trout, they represent really clean water. They represent a very stable and healthy ecosystem. And so that tells us that environment is self-sufficient at that point. But the problem is brook trout are very, quote unquote, tender. I don't know if that's the right word to use. They get preyed upon, as you mentioned earlier, and they can get pushed out by brown, rainbow, other species rather quickly. Am I not correct in that?
so yeah, I mean, listen. I'm not. I have a degree in marketing and finance. Okay,
Right.
I'm not I don't
Fisheries
have a science
biologist,
degree
right?
and stuff. Okay, but like I guess I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV, right? So, um, what I can tell you, yes, all these things that you're saying are true. However, what we're finding in regards to the brook trout, and one of the reasons that I'm focusing on the brook trout is because I have access to these habitats. Okay, Matt. If I live down near you, I'm sure I would end up being an advocate for saltwater species. I promise you that
You
I would. You know,
Side note to that, because you mentioned regulations, right? So, and preservation, that's exactly what's going on. And I think you follow this too with the stripers up and down the East Coast, right?
yeah.
There's severe regulations and slot limits that they continue to impose so that we're not wiping out that species. Continue, because I think we're in the same thing.
Yeah.
So, people who are
So
listening here and anywhere can make that correlation. Brook trout, stripers, regulations, preservation.
yeah, every species, every animal there are characteristics of bad environmental conditions that are going to cause them to be fragile and die, okay, or not do well. And so I'll just go back to the brook trout in regards to how strong they are.
Mm-hmm.
We have we know that in this film that we put together, also the South Inlet Revival film that was on PBS or is on PBS right now, these populations of brook trout we thought that were extinct. Okay, and they survived. So to say that they're fragile, yes, they're fragile in regards to hot water, they're fragile in regards to oxygen content, acidity, but at the same time, they're also extremely robust and extremely strong in regards to the fish that the populations of fish that we are seeing are coming out of the rocks. It seems like. So that's why they're a great species, and I think that they can rebound. A lot of fish can rebound really quick. You see. Look at this with striped bass, right?
Right.
I mean, it's amazing how these species can rebound. And again, I'll go back to the concept of doing these temporary preserves. Is that if collectively, collaboratively across all brook trout ecosystems in the Northeast, if there were these collaborative efforts to try some different things, you could sprint very, very quickly and learn. Virginia could be doing something to try to do a preserve to test a theory, and the same thing could be happening in Maine and New Hampshire and stuff. And by the way, good science is you have a hypothesis. And in my case of this preserve, I think that in the 5 years of the preserve, by electroshocking and doing a population study and genetic study on these fish, that you would see some kind of change in the genetics of these fish, some kind of change, period. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
Right.
Now, at the same time, that hypothesis could be wrong, where the stocking that's being done in Racket Lake, for example, after 3-4 years, the populations of fish in the tributaries could go down, Matt. Okay, and it turns out that the stocking was good.
So then you go back, you make a pivot, and you go back to that stocking program, if that's what it turns out to be.
Yes.
So
yes. And so the bureaucracy of government tends to not want to do innovative, creative stuff. It's hard to change, and so I'm trying to say, like, I understand it's hard to change, you guys. I get it. So let's just all agree that we're going to try to do something temporarily. Do you follow me?
So, Jordan, I want to ask you something about trout power. You started this, as you mentioned, over a decade ago. And you did something I thought was interesting there. You got people like myself, when I lived in upstate New York, very interested in helping protect the waters in which we fished and where we lived. It was the citizen scientist, because I think that was a very powerful way for you to do stuff, to get a hold of people like myself, Mark Usick, others who love where they live and want to help protect it. What was the thought process behind the citizen scientist? Because you not only did it back when I was there, but you did it a few years ago up at Racket Lake as well.
Yeah, again, you keep saying but it's always a group effort.
I get it, right.
I want you to know that. I don't want to take credit for being the only one. However, I get a little bit obsessed thinking about purpose and sense of purpose. It might be because I get frustrated sometimes with other things in my life, but when we brought the sense of purpose of doing science and for an individual angler to do science, that was that it was easy for others to grab onto that. And when we proved it, when we proved that the science was good, we got some credibility going. We really ramped up in regards to the amount of participation that we got. And then the other side of that is, like, what do you do with it, right? So I get very frustrated too that sometimes organizations can just do science work and then they don't do anything with it to move the needle in regards to the bigger deal, right?
Right.
The science is just the data. You use data to make decisions, make good decisions.
Right.
So, don't get paralyzed in regards to just collecting data. Although if, I guess I'm my own devil's advocate, if having a purpose and getting people outside, if this is what it takes to get people outside and they feel better about themselves and they feel better about being outside, then that's fine. That's good. I personally want to go further than that in regards to helping humanity and the environment. So, my sense of purpose is I'm never pleased with myself. So,
and that's wonderful, but also could be a detriment. You do have to kind of step back and look at the big picture, Jordan, about what you have, again, with the group at Trout Power, or you're also a member of Trout Unlimited, the Adirondacks, Region 6. You work with the Mohawk Valley chapter. You help to get a resurgence on that. And you're part of Native Fish Coalition as well. I mean, so big picture, you're doing a lot. I'm just going to tell you that as the moderator of this podcast. So you should take a bow.
I got to make sure I'm not a troublemaker, and I got to make sure I'm a positive instigator. Okay. And, I got a lot of former friends that think I'm a jerk now, that I'm a troublemaker and I have to stay away from their meetings. And that's fine. And the truth is, perception's reality. But like, if we take and look at how we influence what we're doing and what our potential impact is of what we're doing, and we can instigate positively, okay, that's with respect. You do things with respect in regards to other groups. Whenever you ask to do change, whenever you consider putting something out there that is a change, it's really easy for people to take that as a negative connotation, like, well, we're not doing good enough, and that's not true. That's not true, but that's the way it's taken.
I think two things there. I think people are resistant to change, right? They don't like change inherently, right? And two, they think that what they have designed is the best practice and we're at the best place we could be because they're stuck in that small box versus widening the box and looking outside to say, hey, maybe we can make some improvements. Maybe we've gotten this far, but how do we do better? And I think that's what you're basically saying is...
I hate bureaucracy, Matt. I can't stand it. I absolutely can't stand it. I'm an entrepreneur and an innovator, and I cannot stand bureaucracy. I'm sure you deal with it with your own corporate structure. You don't want to say it on your own show, but I'm sure that there's times you bang your head and you go, are you kidding me? It takes this many people to figure out if we need a new, break room or something, and the same thing happens in these conservation groups. And that's why when entrepreneurs and people that have a startup mindset that know they need to pivot, they want to be creative, they step into these bureaucratic atmospheres. And let me tell you, you start trouble.
Yeah.
People get upset.
They do. And you've ruffled some feathers recently as you've had these conversations. I want to get back to your plan here, so I'm going to bring that back up here. Okay. As you've brought up, this area that you want to preserve, which includes Racket Lake and a lot of the streams that lead into and out of Racket Lake. I mean, this truly has ruffled feathers. You've had conversations with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and you've gotten a lot of serious blowback saying, Jordan, stop, pretty much.
I mean, I think that they don't get it. They didn't think there's a problem. And I don't think that there is a huge problem either. I just think there's potential. So, and again, that's another thing that startup entrepreneurs will also look at that, and they see if something is desirable, it's viable, right? It's feasible, and they go, this. I gotta work on this, right? When something is not feasible, or doesn't have a problem, or there's no buyer for it, so to speak, or no one wants to get on board. And let's be honest, if this potential plan, if everyone goes, I'm not on board, okay, well, I have to ask myself, do I want to be like Elon Musk and say, I'm not going to listen to you, and I believe in this, and I'm going to keep on pushing? I may do that. I don't know if I won't, but I certainly, if the general public accepts this and they want to get on board with it, that seems to be the biggest issue. Is a lot of the groups are like, the people around the area aren't going to like this, and I'm like, well, did you ask them? Like, right. You don't even know.
Yeah,
maybe they will. A lot of things have changed over the last couple decades. There's new buyers, there's new owners to land. There's a lot of different mindsets here.
And just to kind of go over this again, your idea, your 5-year preserve plan, no stocking of brook trout in this area we're talking about, and I'll show the map again in a second. Mm-hmm. You're not saying no fishing at all, but you want to cut down the creel to 1, and it's only an 8 to 12 inch fish, so the bigger fish can continue to spawn, and also the smaller fish can grow. Single barbless hook. No live minnows, no live bait. Basically, you're looking more at artificial.
I can go through these points if you want.
Yeah, sure.
There's more behind these. Okay, so the first one is no stocking of brook trout in the preserve, right?
Right.
And the reason for that is to see the effect in the genetics and in the population. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
Does that make sense? Okay. If you can slide up, I just want to read the.
Yep.
So the next one is, it's a little blurry for me. What's the next one?
The next one is the harvest limit to 1 fish per day, 8 to 12 inches only.
Okay, so the reason for that is you don't want to kill a big fish for a trophy. You take a picture of it and you get a reproduction mount done. The reason you can take a fish is if you and I go fishing in the preserve and we're camping and we want to eat a fish we catch, because that's part of the experience. That's why I think that it's allowable that you can take a fish. It's essentially for consumption. If I want to take my kids and they catch a brook trout, okay, and by the way, it says that you can use bait, you just can't use
live minnows.
Okay, the live minnow issue is being addressed now with the pond plan in the Adirondacks, and everyone is saying that minnow release into these habitats is the biggest issue. So I'm saying, look, if you still want to use salted minnows, use salted minnows. If you want to use worms, use worms. I'm not trying to say that people can't fish, I'm just saying don't just eliminate the whole chance in the preserve to put other invasive species or any species you don't want in the area, right?
So the thing is, if somebody uses live minnows and they have 2 or 3 left at the end of their fishing day, they often will just dump those live minnows into, and so therefore they grow, become an invasive species. I see exactly what you're saying there.
Yeah. So the other one is, let's see, barbless hook, right? That's for releasing.
Yep.
That's nothing new, right?
Yep.
But no live
minnows. Then you have closed season October 15th to January 1st. This is for the natural spawning we talked about before.
This is respect to the fish during spawning, right?
Yep.
Then you have the fish shocking, right? And you're looking at, so this is your metric, right? Your performance indicators are, you analyze this. You don't use the trout power thing where you're doing the catching fish and you're clipping fins. You just go in and you shock, get it done quick, and get a really good sample of data. Okay.
Yep.
And you're going to measure the population and you're going to measure the genetics. Okay. And then there's monitoring of angling activity and monitoring of the social effect, right? So the social effect is, if people, if I've got a JP Ross sticker on my truck and people are, cutting my tires, that's probably bad,
Right.
Then again, if from a social standpoint, you go to the tap room and you go to, Tony Harper's and people are like, they got a special thing on the menu that's about the brook trout preserve and people are trying to celebrate the wonderful species that they're trying to preserve, and people rally around it. There's T-shirts that say, respect the natives or something, which is another concept I have, that there could be a whole line of apparel and stuff that people up there sell to make money on it, on the preserve, about the preserve. So there's a social effect to this. There's a people part of this.
I think that's a way to promote the preserve, to raise awareness about the preserve, to really get people excited about it. So it's a threefold thing that you're doing just by having, quote unquote, a T-shirt, a bumper sticker, whatever the case may be. It does bring awareness to that.
Yeah. And I mean, you alluded to it before, right? There's there's other people in government that would see the light on this, that really don't know anything about, brook trout.
Right.
But but go ahead.
When you're looking at this area, and I'm going to bring up the map one more time for our listeners and our viewers here. You've shaded in Racket Lake, and then you have the tributaries. Are you thinking, if this plan is successful, you move it up to Tupper Lake, you do something in Champlain, or
Yes.
So that's kind of the object here, right? Because if it works, then it should work theoretically everywhere.
Yes, the temporary plan is in pencil, Matt.
Right.
Not ink.
Yeah.
And again, that is the idea, as the innovator's mindset, that you are allowing yourself to be creative and you're allowing to change. Yes. If after 5 years things are going well, maybe legislation says, okay, let's make it a real preserve, like forever,
Right.
And I don't know the details of the New York State Constitution in regards to the forever wild part of creating the Adirondacks, but I have a sense that when I have skimmed it and read it, I'm not sure that the forever wild is talking about the stuff that's in the water. A lot of it has to do with the trees and the land and stuff, and not allowing industry, but I'm not sure that we have actually bolted on or bootstrapped onto that what we're going to do in regards to making forever wild even more wild in regards to the water.
Into the species that live in the water, or the species that live on the land in those areas.
I'm sure I'm wrong on this, and that's another thing. I like to say things that people correct me on. I'm trying to make an anchor point here that I'm probably wrong. So if anyone can get back to us on this, but that's also an idea of creatively working through a solution, right? So
to find a solution. So here's a question. So if you do this preserve, it's going to take either state or even congressional, because it's an Adirondack State Park. Have you thought about talking to the Senate district in that area, which is Mark Walsack, or have you talked about talking to the Assemblyman of the 118th district, which is Robert Smullen, who control that area or work for that area, or even going as big as the Congresswoman Elise Stefanik for the 21st district, which is for that area? Have you thought about reaching out to them and saying, look, this is what we're trying to do, or are you not at that point yet?
Not at that. This is all discussion part. Okay. This is the kind of like, throwing out the idea. If you remember, Richard Hanna was very much involved in the early stages of Trout Power.
Right.
Big supporter, huge supporter. Had land on West Canada Creek. So one of the reasons that this area that I chose this area, and again, maybe this isn't the right one, maybe there's another area, okay, is I think that the only thing that has to stop is the fingerlings that are being stocked in Racket Lake. That seemed to me, that's like a pretty simple thing to try. Okay, so we don't stop the truck and dump in the fingerlings, and then we monitor what's going on. The whole big concept of this, of all the regulation changes and all that other stuff, Matt, maybe it turns into a study, and to me, I would say that's okay. To me, that's like a D-, because if you don't get the people pumped up and excited about something, I don't think it's a movement, and I want to be part of a movement.
And I think you've been part of a movement, and I think you're moving, quote unquote, to be part of a new movement to push the envelope, as some will say, but it's all for preservation and conservation. And I don't, as I sit here and I listen to your plan, I don't understand why we wouldn't try this, because I think about the tax dollars that are used to do stocking. Now, you're talking about a small, relatively speaking, Racket Lake versus all the stocking that's done in New York State. So, I mean, that's, a very small thing that they can save. But if this works in Racket Lake and it works elsewhere, then stocking can be reduced if that's an idea, because as we know, I mean, stocking is expensive.
We're a long way from stopping stocking. But I will say there's an opportunity cost in regards to putting those fingerlings in racket when they could be going in other places.
Okay.
Now, Trout Unlimited is working with the state on a wonderful project for culvert removal in the South Branch of the Moose River. Okay, and that happens to be in the region that I'm supposed to be managing, I guess, as Region 6 VP for Trout Unlimited, and that's an awesome project and also an awesome amount of work. But there could be reintroduction of brook trout in either streams or ponds, or I mean, look, Matt, remember our time on the West Canada Creek?
Yep.
Why not try? It's super safe bet to dump brook trout fingerlings in West Canada Creek and see what happens to them. Okay,
right.
There's a ton of tributaries. I mean, why not get your bang for your buck? Still stock, still keep those people employed to be in those stocking jobs, because I know a lot of them.
Right.
And I've graciously been invited to the Rome hatchery when they had a group that came in there from West Point, and I was asked to go talk to them, and I think we're a long ways away from stopping stocking completely, but stocking should only be done when the environment needs it, right? And what I'm saying with the preserve is, let's give the environment a chance here to take care of itself and see what happens.
Okay, so that's an interesting correction to me, because I was, and I'm glad that you're looking at it from a different angle, where I was thinking the goal is, if we can be self-preserving, then you can think about shutting down stocking. But that's an interesting.
There's so much invested resources into stocking.
Yeah.
That I think that again, from an opportunity standpoint, to shut that down would be a loss.
Okay.
And there's a lot of put and take fisheries.
The Salmon River is all the western tributaries that I fish, it still go up there. Those are all put and take fisheries. I mean, right. And we all know that, right? So, but it has come down quite a bit in terms of the stocking over time, just because, I mean, the cost. And sometimes cost becomes a factor, as we know, no matter what we're doing, right? So
I've heard numbers of what an individual fish costs to raise that are pretty astonishing.
I can't even imagine. So, Jordan, I want to pivot here for a second, if I can. You're working also in your son's school. We were talking off air, setting up fish tanks.
Yeah.
I think this is really cool, because to me, this is about, you made a line earlier about you can't have a leader unless you have a follower. But you can't learn something if it's not available to be learned, meaning fisheries biologists don't start out of studying the sky like I did, right? I mean, you have to have your hands into something. So tell us about what's going on here.
So Trout in the Classroom is a program that Trout Unlimited does, and it's a wonderful program. I didn't realize how awesome it is until I kind of pivoted from Trout Power and went into Trout Unlimited. And at the same time, I'm a member of Native Fish Coalition. The Native Fish Coalition is kind of like, well, we don't support stocking, which led me to think about the whole program and get involved in it. And I was like, this program is not about stocking.
Right.
This program is about exactly what you said. They put in 200 eggs into that tank, 100 of them die, Matt. And those kids learn that those ecosystems are fragile. And they learn that there are factors in regards to those fish hatching and turning into fingerlings. Then they turn into fingerlings, and some of them have abnormal egg sacs, and they don't live past, once their egg sac is gone, they die. And the kids learn this type of stuff. And the point isn't about stocking. The point is about learning about the environment, and also enabling these children to run the program themselves. They run it, Matt. There's a teacher that's assigned to it, but Gary Bartell runs Trout in the Classroom. Stu Miller is part of our chapter. I want to give credit to them if they ever listen to this. I mean, Gary is great about setting up these Trout in the Classroom programs. And in our area, in our area of Region 6, which is Mohawk Valley and Tug Hill, I think we have 30 tanks, maybe 35.
Wow.
Okay. Though that's a lot of learning that's going on, where these kids are literally in charge of the oxygen level, the ammonia level, the temperatures. They're checking on these things. They got to clean out, dead fish. It's an awesome responsibility that they get to do, and they get to learn, and they're hands-on.
So as you're talking, I'm looking at this troutintheclassroom.org is the website that I went to from Trout Unlimited when you look at the different programs. This has been going on for 30 plus years. 100,000 plus students have taken part of it. And then, I don't know if people could see, but I actually clicked on the lesson plans here. And I know this is kind of tough to read, but you're talking about STEM, which of course I'm a huge proponent on because I'm all about science, visual language arts, field days activities. There's all kinds of things that you can do. You can catch, back to the Brookie here, and you can download and find out a little bit about that, since we're talking about brook trout. But I really think, Jordan, I think we learn best when our hands are in it. Right?
Yeah.
I think that conceptually, some kids, I was one of those, that study school, learning studies in school, it's sometimes tough to learn on a blackboard. I always say this. In my field of meteorology, when I went to college, I had to take 3 semesters of physics, 2 semesters of chemistry, 5 semesters of calculus, and all of that was so difficult. But the moment I sat in my first high-level weather class and I was shown an equation and somebody said, and this is why we forecast precipitation, it was like a light bulb. That made sense to me. So when you are able to bring this into the classroom and talk about, as you just said, natural reproduction, how fish grow from an egg to a fingerling, etc., there makes sense. And you might turn a child on like this to become a fisheries biologist down the road. Why wouldn't you do that? I think this is an awesome program.
Yep, I agree with you. And, context is everything, right, Matt? And, I often say that talking is not doing. And that's exactly what you're saying. You learning with your hands is awesome, right? It's a great way it's proven, right?
Yeah.
Did you know that these fish, these fingerlings, can be trained?
I did not know that.
I mean, the kids are learning that the feeding of the fish, like in a hatchery, you open up the top, they all know that they're going to get fed. That's not really a good response. Okay, so some of these classes, they'll go to the stream and they'll get bugs or they'll get natural food, and they'll start trying to break the training of the hand, puts in the pellets and they are trained to eat. It's just cool. There should be more of it. I'm sure that there's other ways that we can do this with our kids in schools, and it takes a lot of work. The volunteer work to do this is huge. It is so huge. And the truth is that, doing the right thing is never the easiest, Matt.
No, it's not.
It's hard.
It is hard. So yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, you took step 1, setting up the aquarium in school. Is that correct?
In the school that Parker and Paisley go to.
Yeah.
I got this pain in the ass thing here. This submersible pump. I got to realize what to do with that, because you have to have a chiller, and I'm learning by doing myself. I know that the team wants to jump in and help me, and I'm like, just give me a second here. Let me try to get my bearings. So, and Parker is there every step of the way, my son.
Right.
And yes, this is just one tank out of the 30 that is being set up, and it's right up the street. So
that's awesome. And then you from the setting of the aquarium to receiving eggs, the life of a salmonoid. I'm just looking at this screen here. maintaining that healthy ecosystem, which we talked about, right, when we're talking about brook trout, Racket Lake, and all the streams there, and then connecting back to the watershed. I mean, it's such a cool. I wish I had this when I was in school.
That's at the surface level too, Matt.
Right.
Is, the kids. You know what else is going on?
Go ahead.
You got collaboration between Morrisville and Bosse's.
Tell me about that.
Well, Morrisville has the eggs.
Yeah.
Bosse's is essentially our partner in regards to the tanks. I went and picked up the tank at Bosse's.
Gotcha.
Oneida County Bosse's.
Gotcha.
So again, these circles, the circles of influence of these stakeholder groups, like you talked about, Congress and Senate and assemblymen, and they don't realize the collaboration that's happening behind the scenes to make some of this stuff work. That's a big part of a good program.
Yeah.
And again, being selfless, these Morrisville and Bosse's, I talked to them. They really just want to help. That's super cool,
Right. And so for those that don't know, SUNY Morrisville has a whole major ecology and biology program up in central New York, and they work really well with kids. And Bosse's is that next level of education for students coming out of high school that might not know that college is where they want to go, but they want to get that hands-on learning. So there's a lot of mixture that's working there. I think that's fantastic. You're getting older kids working with younger kids, so to speak, by helping out.
Yep. Yeah. So this is cross-functional collaboration. That's a huge key to success. And again, that was the idea of this concept of that other plan.
Right.
That the brook trout preservation plan was the collaboration with the people, right, and other groups, not the same groups. So.
Very.
And don't forget the symposium coming up too.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I'm going to bring that up on the screen. Coming up really soon is the Central New York Fly Tying Symposium, which is March 23rd of this year. It's in Whitesboro, New York. And I'll bring up the Facebook page on that. Jordan, this is not the first time you've held the Fly Tying Symposium. You did it many, many years ago, and you brought it back last year. And you said that where you held it, you pretty much busted out the walls.
Yes.
So many people showed up. And I'm looking here.
Mark Usick's cousin has 16 Stone Brewery, and they're great. And I feel horrible that we outgrew that, and we moved it to a bigger venue, and we haven't had a purpose. Okay. So the first time we did the symposium, if you remember, Matt, was in Hotel Utica.
Yep.
The purpose of the symposium actually was teaching kids how to tie flies.
Yes.
We may have had 1,000 people come through. I can't remember, but it was pretty big. It was awesome. Then it was we took time off, and then we brought it back, doing it. And Mark Usick was a huge part of this and bringing it back. And the purpose was really just having something to do before, for cabin fever.
Yep.
This year, we're clearly stating that it's free admission to come in. It's free for vendors. We're trying to raise money to buy 3 more trout in the classroom systems. So we're going to call it $3,000, trying to raise $3,000. And you do that by either buying a ticket for the buffet.
Okay.
And the other thing is there'll be bucket raffles. So there'll be a ton of things that you can buy bucket raffle tickets for, as well as now we're starting the sale of regular raffle tickets for a Radisson canoe. So we're going to try to sell tickets before the symposium, then we'll draw the winner for the canoe at the symposium, plus the bucket raffles, plus all these fly tyers will come to have a great time, have a place to sit and chill and learn. Kids can come and learn to tie. And the reason, like I said before, was to raise money for the Trout in the Classroom program.
And this is going to be held just one day, Sunday, March 23rd, beginning at 11 a.m. in Harts Hill. So no matter where you're watching or listening to this, if you're going to be up in Central New York, or maybe take a trip up there and enjoy some, as we know, Jordan, fantastic food in Utica, New York. I mean, for sure, right?
So there's actually a reason for the date is also the outdoor show is going to be going on.
In Syracuse?
The Central New York Outdoor Show or whatever. It's over at uh, the the center where they have the soccer and all that stuff. I got to check on it. But anyway, if
Oh,
you look it up,
okay.
that's going on all weekend. So
Great.
we kind of bootstrap to that on Sunday.
Okay.
So if people were going to travel or whatever, they could go to both the outdoor expo and then they could pop in over to the symposium towards the end of the day. And a lot of people have kids in hockey and stuff on Saturday. So it sounds odd that we're doing it on Sunday, but actually I think it's going to work out pretty good.
Works out pretty well. I like that. Very good. All right. So real quick, Jordan, if you want, I'd be happy to talk a little bit about some rods, or it's up to you. I think that you have some interesting rods, as I've talked about before. Specifically, you do a lot of small stream rods. You had a video the other day where you talked about you do E-glass and S-glass. And I think it's interesting to tell people what the difference is for those who are really just kind of getting into fly fishing, or maybe advancing out of a graphite rod, want that slower feel rod in an E-glass or an S-glass. Yeah.
So do you have that picture? I don't know if you have the picture of the Instagram one or whatever, but if you don't, that's okay.
Yeah, I might not, but I'll see if I can grab it real quick here.
No, that's no big deal. So glass rods were popular before carbon fiber, before graphite.
Right.
And fiberglass, there's different types of fiberglass. There's E-glass, which is an insulating glass. It was primarily used for making insulators in electronics. And then when we kind of got into the space revolution and the advancements in aeronautical technology, S-glass came about. S-glass is a structural glass, and it all has to do with modulus of elasticity. That means is essentially what is the stiffness of the fibers. And so I made a rod about 10 years ago that was E-glass. That was a rod called the Mirror. It was a 5-piece E-glass rod. And then a few years ago, I came out with the S-glass series. And S-glass is considerably more expensive to buy and to make rods out of, but I thought it was worth it. And it's gotten a great response. And then recently, this snow glass is the one that I'm going to be releasing now, because there was so much of a great response to the S-glass that was in like a matte kind of river moss color.
Right.
But everyone loves the Mirror. And then there were so many questions about, well, should I get a Mirror or should I get an S-glass? And I'm like, you know what? The reason that people liked the Mirror was really because of the look of it. And it was only a 7-foot 3-weight 5-piece. So I said, all right, I'll do some naked S-glass and sand it and leave it sanded, and I'll call it snow glass. And that's what you saw there. Is a limited release of these. I don't know how long I'm gonna keep it. But.
I mean, it is super, super pretty. I was up with you over Thanksgiving picking up some stuff because you're my guy, and you showed me a piece of to get off the glass for a second.
Yeah, the Parsec.
Oh my gosh, I have never seen or felt a rod that was that light in a graphite. Usually there's some bulk, but this was, I mean, feather. Yeah. Where did you come up with this idea too?
Well, I'm glad I'm talking to you about it, because I kind of feel bad because I got you into the Coherence Plus, and then shortly after that, the Parsec came out. But you needed that. You'd certainly put the Coherence to the test when you went to Alaska.
I sure did.
So that's not a big deal. But I wanted to push myself to go even faster. So some of this goes back to my love for Steve Bichard.
Yeah.
And the work that I did with Steve and many other casters too, George Daniels and Scott. There were so many people, Tommy Dutcher and all these guys that fished and cast the fast rods that we used on the ESPN outdoor games. And I was like, well, I'm getting this reputation for glass and short stream, small stream rods. And I'm like, I still have it in me to make like a really terrific fast action casting rod. And that's the Parsec. and that one there has got Jeff Kimball's artwork on it. So that's got a cutthroat that's painted on it. That was done on the grip. We did another one recently that had some Northern Lights theme on it, and there has painted butt cap. So there's multiple layers of different modulus of graphite in this, and you felt it, Matt. The thing is it's like a pole vault pole, and when you cast it, you have to be a good caster. I mean, this is like the, like a 911 GT car that people die in because they don't know how to drive it with that much horsepower and so little weight. You have to haul the rod. You have to get the line speed up in order to make it work. And when you do, I mean, it is a pretty amazing how fast the tip recovery and the line speed you can get out of this thing. It is fast.
And so explain to me, if you can, why would I want a faster rod versus a slower rod? Are there conditions that, or type of fishing that might make it better?
Yeah, it's really, I think it's just the reach of trying to cast farther. There's different thoughts about whether a faster rod is more accurate, and throwing big flies. There's a huge movement going on right now with huge streamers, casting these articulated streamers and catching big fish.
Right.
I'll tip my hat to Kelly Gallup. Got both his books. He emails me when I ask him questions. Such a wonderful angler. Mm-hmm. He's innovated the streamer big time. Dwayne, is it Dwayne Chocolate? I think is his name. He made the Game Changer fly. Another great fly. These are huge flies, Matt.
Okay.
And you need a rod that's pretty stiff to cast a fly that's 4 inches or 6 inches long.
So stuff that you'd be going for like muskie for.
No, that's a bit. There's a big.
You're fishing.
I mean, there's a big movement of smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, big river trout.
Okay.
Casting 4-inch flies for trout.
Gotcha. Okay. Huh.
It's changing, man. I gotta tell you, we're getting old.
I guess so. I went and fished a small stream, literally on the West Virginia line. Had a beautiful time. I used the Alchemist. I used the 4-weight portion of it, so the 8-footer kind of section.
Yeah.
Awesome. But I mean, yeah, I was using Jordan. I can't see. I'm trying to tie on a size 16 or an 18. And, I'm sitting there, can I get it through the eyelet? You're right, we are getting old. The eyes are getting tough to see.
But I mean, like, these techniques now are like 0x tippet with huge streamers. And, again, if you read Gallup's book, he talks about the different ways to retrieve these flies. You're taking a note from the bass anglers where they're using the rod.
Right.
To when they strip it. When you strip it, you're also using the rod. Kelly talks about this in regards to his techniques to retrieve these streamers. You're using the rod for both casting and action. You don't want slack. You're not going to get a hook set if you got a soft rod and you're trying to retrieve like that.
Gotcha.
That's a detriment to glass. You're not quick on the hook set with glass.
Gotcha. You mentioned two things that I want to quickly bring back there. You mentioned you collaborate with people when you build your rods. Jeff Gimbel does a lot of these gorgeous hand-painted artwork, and also Mark Usick does some different grips for you as well, does some burned-in grips and stuff too, right?
Yeah, rattan and burnt. Yep.
Yeah, so just a little bit there that gets into it. Jordan, if people want to reach you, website, jprossflyrods.com. If they want to learn more about your ideas for preservation of brook trout, is there a way to get in touch with you there?
What do you think? You think I should put it on the site, these concepts?
I think you should.
Put it out there?
I think you should, honestly, yeah. I mean, what's the worst you get is some feedback, positive and or negative, right? Yeah. Maybe it helps.
I think I kind of want to protect the groups that I am associated with. I still have a ton of respect for Trout Power, and I don't want to do anything to put them in a bad light. Native Fish Coalition is another one. Trout Unlimited is another one. So, like, this preserve concept is something that I came up with, and And I don't know if everyone's going to want to say that they want to get on board with it. That's why I'm kind of like, maybe I'll just play it safe and just get the conversation started, right? So people can poke holes in it.
Well, and you got the conversation started today by talking about the idea, the concept that you have, and where it could lead, and being innovative rather than stagnant. And it's about trying something, gathering data, and seeing if that works, really with no repercussions. Because if it doesn't work, and you can see that in 3 years, you flip the switch and go right back.
Yeah.
So why not? Why not?
So I'll put it on there, okay?
All right. Yeah.
Thanks to you.
I don't know if you could thank me, but I do appreciate it. And I do appreciate you, Jordan, for coming on and talking about this idea and concept that you have. Good luck with the fly tying symposium. And again, goal there to raise $3,000 for trout in the classroom to further learning among students. I love that. That works really well. All part of STEM. Great stuff you're doing, Jordan. I thank you personally.
Thanks. I hope people want to volunteer, and they always need more help. So
I'm sure they will. Jordan, with that, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to quickly sign off here. So, Jordan, thank you. And again,
Thanks,
if
Matt.
you want to find out more, make sure you check out jprossflyrods.com. Jordan, as he said, will put up information about his brook trout preservation idea there. You can reach him, or if you want to help, you can always join Trout Power, Native Fish Coalition, or even Trout Unlimited, even the chapter in your neighborhood, in your home state, obviously doing a lot of work with conservation. For now, I hope you guys all have a fantastic day. I'm Matt DiNardo. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D. Thanks for joining us for another episode